What's going on, Dynasty Fantasy community? This is Generate Talent once again. Here to talk about wide receivers number 10 through 14 and why this is important. Most of this is like splitting hairs because you'd be fortunate to have any of these guys. But we do have decisions sometimes where we have to pick one or the other. And looking at this list, the first guy we're going to talk about is Nico Collins, who I'm going to place at the 4, which is wide receiver 13. And why I have Nico Collins at the 4, let me move Olave back out because I don't want it to get confused here. Why we have Nico Collins at the 4 is because he is C.J. Stroud's number one option. He's 27 years old. Nico Collins does have an injury history. He finished with about 15 points a game last year on average, the 10th overall receiver with a snap percentage under 80%, which is concerning for sure. A little over 4 receptions a game at 4.73 with an average of 74 yards. And touchdowns 4 out of every 10 games. So touchdown rate kind of low, which usually I like these players as touchdown rates fluctuate. With Nico Collins, I like the spot. He is getting older. We're talking about Dynasty, 27 years old. You're still in your prime, but then it drops off a cliff pretty soon. And you got to think that the Houston Texans are looking for Nico's replacement in terms of number one targets. Getting old, getting banged up. It's still very much Nico Collins for right now, but I could definitely envision another receiver coming in this offense and eating alongside him, whether it's someone on the roster right now or someone they bring in shortly. Number 5, and I hope this doesn't hurt too many people here, but I got the first of the 3 Ohio State guys, Emeka Egbuka, who's 23 years old. His rookie year was last year. He's a first-round draft pick. He finished with an average of 11.5 fantasy points a game. That was good enough for wide receiver 25. So when we're talking about wide receiver 10 to 14, he definitely have to improve on what he did last year. On a snap percentage just south of 80%, which is at 79%, that might help with Mike Evans out of the lineup. His receptions was the lowest on this list with 3.7 on average and 55 receiving yards with a touchdown 1 out of every 3 games. So with Egbuka, I think he's a little overhyped. He had a great start to the year, great first half. Second half, drop passes in the end zone. Wasn't good. A lot of people are blaming Baker Mayfield, but I think it's got to wear on both these guys. Egbuka's opportunity got a lot bigger, so I think it'd be a good sell window if you wanted to sell him off. In terms of these 5 players, I got Egbuka at 14 when we're talking about 10 through 14. So we got Egbuka 5th, Collins 4th. I'm going to go Olave here at 3. And this might hurt some people. I just think when we're talking about the talent level, I think Garrett Wilson is the better talent. Yes, his situation sucks, but we'll get into it. Okay, and with Olave, great year last year, right? He had an average of almost 17 fantasy points a game, which put him at receiver number 6 on a 73% snap count, which is still kind of low, especially for the Saints. But his receptions was a top 5 in receptions. He ended up with 6.25 receptions a game, and that's exactly what you love to see. His 6.25 receptions a game, in turn, averaged him about 73 yards receiving, as well as about a touchdown every other game, which is great for Olave. If we could repeat that season, obviously he'd be top on this list, no problem, as well as George Pickens probably, right? But we don't always get that season repeated, and with Olave, with the injury history, with the concussion history, there's something to tread a little bit lightly here. Yes, we saw Tyler Shuck look great, but that's 1 year. How many quarterbacks have come out 1 year, they've been impressive, C.J. Stroud, they've been super impressive, and then the next year, it's like, wow, is this really the franchise quarterback still? I don't know. I'm not completely sold on Tyler Shuck. I'm not ready to give him the reins. I wouldn't even be surprised if Derek Carr gets a call later in the year like, hey, we own your rights. You ready to take over in New Orleans? But that's talking crazy. Chris Olave, a great price, I would say, but you do have to consider the injury history, the fact that he's about to be 26 years old. The body usually doesn't get better as you get older. I think he's in a great opportunity. No one's really going to battle him for targets in New Orleans. So you're getting those number 1 targets. Hopefully Devon Vele also on the opposite side of things gets open and gets targets. But for Olave, really it's the injury history keeping him back on this list. funny to say that because Garrett Wilson definitely has an injury history as well. I think half of it has to do with them always being out of the playoff picture and stuff like that. Been getting a little rest. Let's talk Garrett Wilson. This guy was the 63rd best receiver last year, which is super disappointing. You could say, how are you going to put him in the top 12 receivers in the league if he finished at 63. The difference being his snap percentage, 90%. He's out there all the time. When the ball is being huddled, when the ball is being snapped, Garrett Wilson is in the mix. He's out there on the field. He can possibly make plays, and that's what we need. So that 90% snap percentage is going to actually be the highest out of all of these 5 guys. I love the fact that when he's on the field, it's pretty much when the Jets' offense is. Now, diverting a little bit away from that, he averaged 5.14 receptions on 56 receiving yards. He scored a touchdown about 1 out of every 2 games he played and averaged about 14.2 fantasy points a game. Now, the thing I like about Garrett Wilson is definitely not his quarterback, Geno Smith going there, which, nothing to really be excited about. But Garrett Wilson gets all the targets, like the whole offense, Garrett Wilson, in terms of the passing volume. So that's something that we love. Also, I hope Garrett Wilson can put together a full season here because you're currently 26 years old. You've shown us flashes that you could be a super elite receiver in this top 10. But, the Jets haven't done a whole lot to help him out. They're back again with a subpar quarterback. It looks like they're sucking for Arch Manning. Can they win the suck-off with Miami Dolphins? I don't know. They look pretty bad too. But Garrett Wilson, I feel like, has a huge season and shows that he's going to be uber productive with his new quarterback that comes in next year. Now, for the big 2-6, we got George Pickens being a huge part of that Dallas offense once again. And if he isn't, he's going to be the number 1 receiver wherever he gets dealt. So George Pickens we love because he's second youngest on the list, right? He's a second-round draft capital, I believe, out of, was he a Georgia guy, Bulldog? I think so. I'm not sure off top. But George Pickens is 25 years old when the season starts. He averaged 17.17 fantasy points a game last year, which was good enough for wide receiver 5. That helped that CeeDee Lamb was out a lot of the time, about half the season, just with various injuries, concussions, different things, gave Pickens some time. And Pickens' snap percentage was 83.33, which is second highest on this list. So 84% of the time, he's out on the field when the Cowboys are on offense. He had 5.5 receptions a game, which equated to about 84 receiving yards a game, which is by far the highest out of these 5, and getting about a touchdown every other game. So when we're talking about these receivers, I'd much prefer Pickens and Wilson as opposed to Olave, Collins, and Egbuka. Egbuka, I just don't feel like can continue the success of the first half of the season. I don't think he's that type of receiver. I don't think he's going to be top 12. I think he's going to be very productive, but definitely in that wide receiver 2 range, somewhere in maybe the 18 to 22 range. Nico Collins, I like it. I don't love the offense. I don't know if they really got better getting David Montgomery. I do think everything's going to go through Collins, but with his injury history, I just can't trust him to be more productive than Olave, Wilson, and Pickens. Getting to Olave, I definitely prefer to Collins and Egbuka, but with Olave, it's important to know the concussion history. It's also important to know that Tyler Shuck could not be the answer. There could be changes there if things don't work out. I could see Olave. They were even talking about a possible Patriots move last season. So this guy could get moved to a competitor at the deadline, which doesn't necessarily better his situation. And with the possible injury history and just what I think about the Saints offense in general, I just don't think this is going to be a top 10 guy, maybe just right outside the top 10 here. And this would be number 13. Garrett Wilson, same type of deal. Not super confident in his signal caller right now, Geno Smith. I don't know if there's someone coming in from the draft that's going to increase his stock. Garrett Wilson, I do believe, is probably the most talented receiver on this list outside of Pickens. Pickens' body control is just something else. But Garrett Wilson is very, very much of that ilk. I think Pickens and Wilson here are much closer than the other 3. So with Garrett Wilson, I just not a fan of the signal caller. The Jets just don't provide a lot of offense, don't score a lot of touchdowns. So it was pretty impressive. He averaged about a touchdown every 2 games. But when we're talking about offense, we're talking about the Dallas Cowboys. If Pickens gets dealt, this might change. But in the current offense, I love CeeDee Lamb, love CeeDee Lamb, love George Pickens on the same offense. It seems like they just feed each other there. I know probably both of them can't finish top 5, but the offense was number 1 last year. So don't sleep on Dak Prescott. I know he was on my sell video. Feel free to check that out if you like. But the passing volume through Pickens and Lamb with a very subpar rushing attack, I love it. I love Pickens here. Wide receiver 10, sign me up. And I know our next start of the list is going to start with Tet McMillan. Bold take, I'd rather have Pickens than Tet McMillan. And that's just what it is. I love Pickens' game, body control, best receiver on this list. I am concerned with his, on-field antics, not off-field, on-field antics. He just does some wild stuff, like he pulled a player down by his face mask, got kicked out of the game. Just different things that you would hope maturity brings him back around. But even if it doesn't, the talent is hard to reject. So here we go. This is my receivers number 10 through 14 based on Fantasy Flock's list. This is how I'd rank them. How would you rank them? What do you see in them? Who do you have at the top of your list? Are you putting Egbuka higher up with the age and just the growth, the possible targets in that offense? Are you sleeping on Pickens just because CeeDee Lamb is back and he's going to be playing more? Nico Collins, do you reject the injury history? Are you seeing a big CJ Stroud bounce back? Let me know in the comments. Generate talent. I appreciate you guys watching. This is wide receivers 10 through 14. Peace.